Gambit is one of those heroes where I feel like a lot of people like to play him in Justice. And there's nothing wrong with that, right? Gambit in Justice works actually pretty well. He's pretty strong in Justice. But personally, I like him in Aggression. I think it works really well in Aggression. So I want to show you the deck that I use, talk a little strategy, and then we'll play some pretend hands, some mock hands to kind of show how the turns go and what my thought process is. So hopefully that will help you out a little bit. Now, really quick, the deck list is in the description, but it's going to list 43 cards. You don't actually play with 43 cards. There are 3 events you would switch out depending on what kind of villain scenario you're playing, and we'll explain that when we get to the table. So let's go check out the cards. All right, we got all of our cards laid out down on the table, and we'll work left to right and kind of go through each one and talk a bit about them. So we'll start with our basic allies. Now, you'll see that I have a non-X-Men ally in here, and the reason being is because we're not running like X-Men trait stuff, so we don't have to worry about them all being X-Men. So I have Ironheart as a cheap blocker, and it's an easy way to just draw a card, which is really nice and really useful. Angel is pretty cheap because his cost is being reduced by 1 when we use Gambit. And then Professor X to either ready up Gambit or to confuse an enemy, which is really important, or confuse the villain, I should say. Yeah, confuse the villain. Sorry, confuse the villain or ready up Gambit, either one. Confusing is going to be really important and really strong with Gambit in general. So that's why we have Professor X in there. And plus, the 3 thwart helps a lot. Now, as far as aggression type allies, we're running Spider Girl because, again, I like the idea of being able to stun and confuse a minion. I think that's really strong. Then we have Hulk, who I like Hulk as just a blocker, basically. I don't ever use Hulk to attack or anything like that. He's just a blocker, and that's it, unless I'm making a final push at the end or something like that. Wolverine, we've talked about in the past. I still think Wolverine is one of the best aggression allies that you can get out there because of his piercing attack. And then Psylocke, because once again, that Psylocke allows you to confuse an enemy. Right, I think it's really strong and can be really strong. So that's one of my favorite things about her, and this will help us flip down when we need to. Now, again, this deck gets kind of out of whack if you're facing against a villain with steady or stalwart, so you have to make adjustments. I'd probably pull out Psylocke. I'd probably keep Professor X because being able to ready up is still really useful. But you could pull out Psylocke for either another ally that thwarts a good amount or someone that attacks, whatever you think you need more of. But Psylocke is the one ally I would switch out, but the rest of them would still work with steady and stalwart, so you don't have to worry about that too much. Now, these 2 events are the events I talked about where you would run one or the other. Okay, so I would run either uppercut or melee. And the reason being is because uppercut is more focused if I'm just facing like the villain and that's it, right? I don't have to worry about other minions or other cards. I'm just worrying about the villain because we could turn that 3 to 5 into massive damage really easily with Gambit. Melee, I like to run if there's a lot of minions because again, we could turn melee into a very strong card where it's doing like 3 for 6 and then another 6. But if you're going just against the villain, it doesn't make any sense. You're just doing like a 3 for 6 versus uppercut. I mean, we could push that up to like 3 for 9 or 10, right? Very easily we can get that up pretty high. So that's why you have to decide what kind of deck you're running or what kind of villain you're playing against. Again, a lot of minions. I'm putting melee in. It's going to clear out those minions pretty easily. It's going to help us a lot. If I don't have to worry about minions that much, like if there's only like 1 or 2 in there and they're pretty weak where Gambit can take them out or just an ally hit can take them out, then I'll run something like uppercut. Then we also have surprise attack because, again, we're probably going to be flipping back and forth with Gambit in the way that he works so that after you change form, you deal 3 damage to an enemy, 4 instead of you used a fist resource. It can be super helpful and useful, again, if you're flipping a ton. If you start playing steady and stalwart villains, you might not flip as much, so you have to judge if this still makes sense for you. I don't know if it will or not. But I'm only running 2 of them as well, not running a ton of them, so also important to note. So let's do supports next. I have crew quarters because once again, if I'm flipping down, I want to be able to heal up and I don't want to exhaust Remy to heal up, generally speaking, because he's really strong in alter ego for getting rid of thwart or threat, but you have to exhaust Remy in order to do it. So I don't want to exhaust him to heal. I'd rather do it with crew quarters. The other support we have is Moira, once again, because after we change from alter ego to hero form, we exhaust her and we get to draw a card. Anytime you get card draw is pretty strong, so I like that card a lot. Now for upgrades, I like xgen a lot because some of Gambit's cards can be expensive, and this is a nice way to be able to get them in there. It's not necessary to play, but it does help. Endurance is a great card for him because he only has, 9 health. He is a weaker X-Men, and most of the X-Men are pretty weak on that hit point wise, so it's a quick way to get 12 hit points. And then we also run Def Focus because a lot of his cards are superpower cards. Again, you don't have to run Death Focus. If you rather run something else, you can. It's not 100% necessary, but I kind of like it. Then we have Martial Prowess to help pay for some of our attack events, because we do have quite a bit with the uppercut or the melee events, or surprise attack, which is also an attack event, and this would count as your strength resource, which helps a lot. But he also has some strong attack events that we want to be able to pay for as well. And then lastly, we have two, well, not lastly, but we have two warrior skills for upgrades. You can only play one, but I want to get this card on the table because when your hero attacks, remove one warrior counter from here. That attack deals one additional damage. Now, remember, it's not just physically turning the card that causes him to attack. It's any of the melee cards. So or the attack event cards. So for example, melee will go from a 3 cost to a 3/3 damage. Using a warrior skill on top of it would change it to 4/4. As easy as that, right? So we'd be able to use one of those counters for there. Gambit has some cards where that really like works well with, and we'll get into that in a second, but that's why we have that. Lastly, we have our doubles, which are always helpful, but we also have aggressive energy. Aggressive energy, when you spend this to play an attack event, the event deals one additional damage. Now, if we use a double and aggressive energy to play melee, and we have a warrior skill out, we're now looking at melee costing 3, but doing 5 damage and 5 damage, which is fantastic, right? Uppercut is now doing 3 for, let me count really fast, 6, 7, right? 3 for 7 damage, which is really good, really strong. So that's why I had built like this. Really quick, I want to talk about Gambit and the reason why it's even more important. We'll get more into this in the strategy, but again, you place charge counters on him and you can remove up to 3 charge counters to increase the damage by 1, right? So when you would play an attack event, remove up to 3 charge counters, the attack does +1 damage for each charge counter removed. So this 3 for 5 card would be 3 for 6, 3 for 7, and if we remove 3 counters, it's now 3 for 10, right? So now he becomes super aggressive and super strong. Melee goes to a 3/3 damage, to 4/4 damage, 5/5, 6, 7, 8. So at 3 cost, 8 damage out, or 8 damage minion, 8 damage on the villain or another minion. You can see how there's already stacks and how this kind of works together. So that's why I really like it. So let's talk a bit about strategy and then we'll show some example hands. All right, so as I mentioned with Remy LeBeau, his alter ego ability is pretty interesting, that you would exhaust Remy to look at the top 2 cards in the encounter deck, discard one of those cards, and remove a threat equal to the scheme to the number of boost icons. You kind of have to read what the game looks like in the very beginning. All right. So with a lot of heroes, it's not that it's, I don't want to say it's easy, but it's easier to be like, okay, step 1, you want to do this, or step 2, you want to do that. With Gambit, it's a little bit different because it depends on what the board state looks like right away. So for example, if the main scheme already has 1 or 2 threat on it, then exhausting Remy to deal with that makes sense. If there's a way that you can confuse him earlier on to keep Remy out for a while, that makes sense too, because you get a larger hand size by drawing up more cards. But on the other side, you need to be able to flip up to Gambit to start your charge counters, right? And you want charge counters because you need that massive damage. Basically how you're going to win the game, right? There are 2 cards we have to point out that he has going for him with attacks, which is Charge Card and Royal Flush. Again, Royal Flush is the 0/0/0 damage card. So if you remove 3 counters, it becomes a 3/3/3 damage. Well, now if you use Warrior Skill and Aggressive Energy, it becomes a 5/5/5 card, right? So it's a 3 for 15 damage possibility card, which a lot of villains just like knocks them out like that. Charge Card is also fantastic as a 2-cost card. Again, if you remove 3 charge counters on it and then do Warrior Skill and Aggressive Energy, you're looking at now 2 cost to do 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 damage. 2 for 9, which is really strong, right? Gambit can get really strong really quick. The build out for him is a little weird sometimes. Because for me, it's really about warrior skill. Martial prowess helps. The other stuff is nice, right? And it's just a lot of, you have to read the game as you go along, which can make Gambit feel a little trickier than what he should be. So anyway, let's flip down to the table and let's go through our first hand or initial draw and just do some quick examples of how I play Gambit. All right, so let's play an opening hand for Gambit. Like I said, it kind of depends on what the board state looks like in its original state. So we'll talk a bit about it. I just want to shuffle this up so you don't think I stacked the deck or anything like that. We are playing with uppercut and not melee in this deck right now. It doesn't really make a difference. The only difference would be if you're dealing with a lot of minions or not. But let's get this done, and then let's draw 6 cards. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So our opening hand would be Death Focus, Hulk, Creole Charmer, which would be interesting, Thieves Guild, Uppercut, and Psylocke. So first we have to talk a bit about Creole Charmer, because Creole Charmer is a really interesting card to get right away. Because if there is threat on the main scheme, right, or a scheme, doesn't really have to be the main scheme, but it helps if it's the main scheme. If there's threat on that scheme that you can remove with 3, Creole Charmer is 100% a card I'm going to hold on to. If there's no threat anywhere, I don't hold on to it. So you can already see how it's kind of weird to build with Gambit and like explain how I would do the first turn, because you kind of have to read the board and understand everything that's going on. But this is a perfect example. Creole Charmer, let's assume that there's threat on the main scheme, right? 1 threat, 2 threat, doesn't matter. And it's not a steady or stalwart villain. I'm going to hold on to Creole Charmer for sure, which means I don't need Psylocke anymore. I don't know if I need Uppercut. Thieves Guild would be nice to hold, but again, we have to math it out if it makes sense. Let's just say it doesn't, because you would have to resolve your Thief Extraordinaire, which is this. You would remove 1 additional threat, and then you get to draw a card as the last one. It's a nice card to remove 1 additional threat. It really is, but sometimes get it timed to draw the card can be a little rough and can be kind of hard. Let me just push that down. Hulk, I do like the idea of Hulk as a blocker. And then Death Focus, I'm going to say no to right now. But we'll hold on to Hulk as a blocker. So we get to draw 4 more cards. 1, 2, 3, 4. All right. Not exactly the hand that I wanted, but that's all right. So, for example, I want to play Creole Charmer no matter what. So we probably would get rid of 2 cards to play him. So now the enemy is confused, right? Because we removed the 3 threat, so we're good. And then I would just do something like, I would try to decide if I want to exhaust. So this is another example of where it's kind of tough. Gambit's Guild Armor is a great card, right? After Gambit defends against attack, it takes no damage. And his defense is 3, right? 3 defense is pretty darn strong. But do you think you'll be able to defend that often and not take 3 damage? Right? That's really what it kind of comes down to. So for me, I'm going to say I'm not going to be able to do that. We're actually going to throw away the armor to play endurance because I'd rather take the health right now. I'm just going to get rid of Hulk. So now we would go to the next stage. Again, we put 1 threat on there, let's say, because we cleared it out, but now 1 would go on normally. 2, 3, 4, 5. And we draw back up to 6. They're confused. They do nothing. Bad card's just a bad card. Okay. So now we have not a bad hand. Okay. So for this, for example, you can remove threat now by exhausting Remy if you really wanted to, if you really felt like you needed to, or we could just flip up. The second you flip up, make sure you put a charge counter on. You want to make sure you get those charge counters done as fast as possible. So I would signify that I've done that. And then it's a surprise attack. I think is an easy way to get that going. So I would throw away probably Professor X to do 4 damage really fast, right? Easy way to do 4 damage. Now Rogue would be 1 cheaper because I have 1 charge counter on. So I would dump 3 cards, honestly, to play Rogue at this point, who would come in with tough. And that gives me an easy block right there. And now Gambit, if I didn't thwart before, I could attack 2 for now or something like that. So now we'll play 1 more hand. 2, 3, 4, 5. So now, let's say it's our turn. She took the block. It took off her tough. Okay, easy enough. We have Rogue now where we can now thwart for 2 with her. We can do 2 damage. We can figure out what we want to do with Gambit in a second. But, all right, we got his great Molecular Acceleration card, which is going to help us a lot in a second. A surprise attack, which doesn't really help. Okay, so what we would do is right away put another charge counter on. So we're up to 2, which is really nice. And then you could use Molecular Acceleration I would actually probably throw away 2, 3, 4. Molecular Acceleration, when we spend it, we get another charge counter. So we're already up to 3, which is great. To play Wolverine. And then hold on to charge card. And this is probably an attack card I would start next turn because we'd be able to get up to 4 counters. I play this card, and we'll do it in 1 second. Be able to play this card and do massive amounts of damage. But now we have a hand where, okay, I can attack for 2. Let's say Rogue can thwart for 2. And now Wolverine's, throwing down for 3. And now we're starting to get the cycle already built out. We're starting to do some damage. Let's say we just take the hit for the next round, whatever else. It doesn't matter. So 2, 3, 4, 5. Now, again, we're running this gets tricky because I kind of want to do martial prowess because it'd be nice to pay for events, or you can do Ironheart if you think that might be better. If you think you can get a double. I don't think I can though. So let's throw away 2 cards and we play martial prowess. And then we would do this to get our 4th counter on. Wolverine would be able to do either new 2 damage and knock himself out, or Rogue can throw it for 2. We could do whatever. We can use martial prowess and throw away Ironheart to play charge card. So we would get rid of 3 tokens, and now we're doing 2 for 7 damage. And you can already see how like it's already kind of stacking each other. We're already being super aggressive. We're halfway through our deck already, and we haven't even gotten our biggest hit cards yet, right? With Royal Flush, both of them are on the bottom. We still have a charge card going. And whatnot. So that's just an example of kind of opening hand of how I would play them. Again, it's a lot of reading the villain and kind of understanding where they are and what you feel like you have to kind of do in that situation. All right, let's say we're further along in the game, right? And we're barely built out. I mean, we have Warrior Skill. Let's say it still has its 3 counters on. Doesn't really matter. And we have Ironheart and Spider-Girl, right? But we do have 4 charge counters on us. And we're dealing with a villain now that has 1 hit point before we're ready to flip them. Next stage has 18, right? For example. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Let's say we draw our 5 cards. Let's say this is the status quo after it's all said and done. We had a different blocker or something like that. Interesting. This is an interesting hand. Okay, cool. So, for example, let's say the villain, again, we want to knock them out stage 1. We use it with Ironheart. They flip the next stage 2 where they have, what would it be? 18 life left. So we could do Spider-Girl, brings them down to 16. Then, for example, I would do something like a Royal Flush. And I would use Molecular Accelerator and, what is that called? Aggressive Energy. So Royal Flush, I would spend 3 tokens. We would get 2 back because of Molecular Acceleration and Royal Flush. And we exhaust this. So now we do 3, 3, 3, but this gives us 4, 4, 4, and this gives us 5, 5, 5. So I do 15 damage to the villain and then swing for 16, 17, and we did 18, 19. As easy as that, right? It just takes that one big hand as long as you have Warrior Skill built out there. It would not take that much to do. Let's say for some reason we didn't have Royal Flush. I mean, you could start using Professor X to ready yourself up, ready yourself up, remove some threat, and be able to take a block. And hopefully the next hand you're getting Royal Flush or something else that's really strong. All right, let's play another situation where you're at the end of the game, right? We have Remy side. Psylocke was able to confuse the villain, so we were able to flip down to get a bigger hand this turn. And then we have Rogue, Warrior Skill, and Martial Prowess in to help us out. So how will we play this? Well, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Let's assume that the threat isn't going to get too crazy, and we have some big attack cards, like absolutely monstrous attack cards. So we are going to work with them. So first thing you probably do is just go up to Gambit side. Let's say you do the 1 attack to flip the villain, right? Let's say they only have 1 health left, and we're dealing with a villain now with 18 health on the other side. You're gonna probably want to do a double to get another charge counter on, and use Martial Prowess to once again play Royal Flush. We're looking at 15 damage there. Not 15 damage, I'm sorry. 3 through 3. Use a Warrior Skill. It's 4, 4, 4. Remove 3 counters from here. We get to put 1 back. There we go. It's 4, 4, 4. So that'd be 12 damage. So they have 6 life left. And then we could either do a double and a natural agility to play an uppercut, which is probably what we would do. So it'd be 5. We could remove 3 more tokens off of here. So it's at 7. So that brings us down to a 4. And now it's 3, 4, 8 damage right there. And that would be easily the game. We can exhaust Gambit to do 2 more damage. Rogue can do 2. Rogue can thwart 2. Whatever else, it doesn't really matter. But you can see how once you get Martial Prowess and Warrior Skill, how much damage you can burst and how quickly you can burst it and how fast Gambit can really work. It really, to me, it becomes this game where I control the board state in the beginning, and then we just go nuts once we get like Warrior Skill and Martial Prowess kind of out there. All right, so this was just kind of a quick example again of how I like to play Gambit. It's not the only way to play Gambit by any means, but for me personally, I like aggression Gambit. I think he's a lot of fun. Really, the hardest part is in the beginning stages where you're trying to balance things out. Where when do I want to play martial prowess? When do I want to play warrior skill? Right? How soon can I get them out there? And then slowly build up those charge counters because you do want to get those up. Those are going to be really key and really important. And then it's really just kind of keeping a blocker out there, figuring out when you can flip down because that's really solid too, right? Getting those confuses on the villain so you can flip down, and then figuring out the best time to remove threat from the scheme as alter ego. So Gambit can be really hard in that sense to navigate. And again, I think that's why a lot of people lean into Justice because they do want to flip down, and the timing aspect, especially in True Solo, could be really hard. So anyway, hopefully you've enjoyed this video. Hopefully this playthrough explanation thing makes sense, and hopefully it helps you out. If you want to see another example of this, I'll put Wolverine right here. We did the same thing with Wolverine where I did Wolverine protection because I think that's the best Wolverine. And if you made it this far in the video, make sure to hit the like button, subscribe, leave a comment, all that fun stuff. It really helps the channel. See you all next time.